Hi, my name is Mike Sigman. This videotape is about how to do something called internal strength. What is internal strength? Internal strength is a different way of moving the body than you normally move. This is the sort of movement that is the core part of Tai Chi, Aikido, Xingyi, and other Oriental martial arts. A lot of the currently available videos on these arts show the essence of techniques involved or the essence of the choreographed movement that's involved in these things, but they don't show how to do this form of movement. So our video today will actually concentrate on how to do the movement. Why would you want to do that sort of movement? Well, this movement is unusually efficient and powerful. It's a skill that involves manipulating things with the structure of the body doing most of the work, or with gravity doing most of the work, or with a combination of the structure and the gravity. While you're doing this, instead of using isolated portions of the body, the whole body will be used, most of the power coming from the legs or the middle portion of the body. In fact, as we go through this, you'll see that the middle portion of the body is the controlling aspect of this form of power. All right, so let's get started. All right, so let's take a look at how the body structure is used and how gravity is used. From the body structure and from gravity, we can actually describe all motions. We can describe, of course, anything being supported upward, and we can describe any sort of force going down. A combination or usage of the two can give us power away from the body or power toward the body. These are the four directions of power that we'll be looking at as we go along. First, let's take a look at the structure of the body in a very simple situation where we're carrying a load on the head. Now, we're going to get more complicated and sophisticated as we go along, but let's just take a look at this simple example. If I have a load that is resting on my head, I can support it with the structure of my body. Now, a lot of people, when they use the structure of their body, automatically kick in areas of tension that they're not aware of. For instance, the lower back may be somewhat tight. The neck may be tense itself while they're holding something up. What we want to do is relax all of the postural muscles to the point where they're only supporting the structure and letting the structure do the work. So if I have this load on my head and I relax under it, I sink down and I try to just let the support of the ground under my feet actually reach through my structure to the top of my head and support this load. If I'm very relaxed, the rest of the body can move and wiggle around, and yet as far as the load on my head is concerned, what it feels is the very solid support of the ground. This is what we want to do, is relax the body and allow the support of the ground to come through it. All right, so to reiterate, the basic point is that we want to use the path of the ground itself, coming from the feet to the top of the head in the simplistic example we used where we were carrying a load. We have to have, in this case, it's very obvious, the shortest path to the feet themselves, which in this case is straight through the body. Later we're going to do situations where the path from the feet to the load is not so obvious. We want to use the least postural muscles involved. In other words, I can check myself, for instance, in this simple case where I had something on my head, I can check and be sure that there's nothing being used in terms of postural muscles other than the muscles that are needed to keep the body structure itself in place. We want the work itself to be done by the structure of the body. We should be relaxed for several reasons. In this case, we want to be relaxed for the simple reason that we're allowing the structure to carry the load. If we are not relaxed, we can't retrain ourselves to just let the postural muscles work in that mode. We'll go back to our old habits of movement, which might include a tense lower back, tight legs, hunched shoulders, a stiff neck, and so forth. All right, so let's take an example where if I'm, instead of lifting with the head, I'm lifting with my hands or arms. If I'm using my hands or arms, it's really the same thing as if I'm lifting something from the top of my head. If I'm going to use this ground path, I can keep the ground path and sink downward, letting the legs take the load, not the upper body. And I can also add in the lower back itself and let it sort of bow outward slightly. Not too much, not too into an awkward or extended position. And then when I straighten, I can straighten the ground path up under our load that we had, straight up. So the idea is that I keep this ground path under the load, particularly in this example where we have something on our head. I go down, keeping my attention on the fact that the load would feel a solid ground path, and then I would raise up, making sure that the ground straightening up is what is lifting the load. If I use my hands and arms, I'll do exactly the same thing. If I'm lifting something that's on my arms, I'll use the legs and the lower back to get under the load that's on my arms and raise the arms up under the load. So I can go down, trying to keep the ground path to the load very steady, very solid. And when I raise up, I again try to keep the focus of the ground path under the load. What I don't want to do is to involve the shoulder muscles to the point that they're doing the lifting and the lowering. So what I want to do is manipulate the path of the ground using the middle portion of the body and the legs to raise the load and lower it. So in looking at the second of our 4 building blocks, we will go to down power. Now, the 4, again, are the structural power up, the gravity-based power going down, and then the power going up and away from the body, and the power that's coming down and toward the body. All right, so the power of gravity pulling down is something that we want to be able to harness also. If I take an example with Kim here, and I want to lift her. I want her to relax because we want gravity to do the work here. So if I'm lifting her and I just tell her to relax so that gravity does the work, but she relaxes to too much of an extent. Really what I did was I lifted her shoulders. So she didn't really use the power of gravity to do anything. If she relaxes but puts the weight of her body into my hands where they're actually holding under her armpits. In other words, as she feels the hands under her armpits, she tries to say, okay, he's wanting to hold my weight, I will let him hold my weight. So when she thinks like that, and I start to lift, and she's put the weight there, then I can't move her, and her shoulders don't come up. So she's effectively putting her weight into my hands, and I cannot move them. If we take the example out a little bit, and I'm reaching under her elbows. Now in this case, she has to sort of mentally figure like, okay, he's going to lift. I'm going to make him try to lift my whole body. So she sort of rests her weight without an exaggerated lean. She rests her weight into my hands, and again, I run into a considerable force coming down. All right, so if we go even further out, maybe to here, not too far, all right. And what she has to do is feel my lifting up, and she tries to rest as much of her weight as she can into my hands. Then she's using gravity to pull down, and she's using less of the arm muscles themselves to pull down. She's actually letting the body sink and do the work. So any down movement that she does with her hands can be powered in a large, gross manner at first by just the weight of the body, and later as she gets better, and we'll go into this later, she'll be able to apply the weight to the hands fairly easily. In a lot of the martial arts, this is a constant way of training the body to put the mind into allowing the weight to be in the hands and staying relaxed. If you stay relaxed while you do this, you will find that the body begins to assign muscles to do this task automatically, and after you do it over an extended period of time, it becomes trained into the body. So if I pull something down, the body comes down. Maybe later I can do it fast, like this, and actually bring power much more quickly. All right, so let's go to the third of our major directions, which is going to be up and out from the ground. Again, the criteria that are most important are that we have the shortest path from the point of the load to the supporting foot. We also want to, again, very strongly stress the fact that the muscles must be as relaxed as possible and only have the amount of force that is necessary to keep the structure in place so that the structure conveys the load. And lastly, of course, we want to always be aware of the fact that the middle of the body and the legs are doing most of the work. Now, by middle of the body, of course, I mean the waist muscles, but I also mean the back, because the back is one of the strongest parts of our body. So now with Kim's help, if I begin to push on her in this way, where we're looking at power that's coming up and out of the ground, if I push on her hip, then she can ground this by just sort of relaxing and letting the push go into her supporting leg, the back leg in this case. This is not hard to do. It's just very much like if somebody adds a load to you. You normally don't make any particular adjustments. You just sort of shift onto a leg and let the weight go into that leg or down that leg. If I then add a push here, this push is essentially the same thing as the push I just did down here. But the difference is that in this case, if she sort of relaxes and wills that or allows that push to go down into her back leg, the central portion of the body, the muscles, sort of automatically kick in to allow the transmission of that push down to her hips, which then goes down to her leg. I can then change this a little bit and use her arm. If I use the arm, it's no different than if I were using a stick. To do what I just did, I pushed here, and if I do here, it's the same thing. I'm pushing. I'm a little away from the shoulder. If I lift her arm and I push, then it's exactly the same thing as if I were using a stick to push her torso, which she relaxes and allows it to go into her back leg. Okay, so what is the shortest path to the ground from here? The shortest path to the ground really doesn't go through her shoulder and then down through her body. It goes from this area where I'm pushing down toward the middle of her body and then into her back leg. So in terms of her idea of the feel of this path coming from the ground, it comes from her back leg, her left leg in this case, through the body and directly toward here. So in terms of what she should be aware of, it should be a path coming from her elbow down to the central part of her body. And the postural muscles of the shoulder are only enough to hold the shoulder in position to allow the ground path to do most of the work. If she's doing this, or if you're doing this at home, you need to be aware of several things. One, how relaxed are you? As a general rule, the things that I spot that people do wrong are this. They tend to have a tense back. That's the first problem. So always take your back and relax it. Just let it slump slightly outward. Make sure the weight is on the back leg and that you're not forward onto the front leg. And try to put your weight fully over the back leg. There. See, so she actually moved back and put the weight so that it goes more completely down the back leg and is less dependent on the front leg. Okay? She should not push outward. A lot of people tend to push outward when they're trying to learn to do this. The idea is to relax and let the push compress the back leg. If she goes down, she basically, what I feel here is a very solid structure that goes to the ground. So I feel this structure and she should be aware of it. And then if she goes in and down and then back toward me, Okay, and okay, so slowly, let's do it again. So I feel this solid ground path. As she slowly goes back, I have to make sure that I feel the very solid ground path. And then as she comes toward me, I feel that it is solid and there were no breaks. If she results to a sudden use of the shoulder or something in the middle of this, it's immediately apparent. What we're trying to do is to use the structure and solidity of the ground to do the work, either whether it's coming out or if it's supporting something and going back in. Okay? Now, in this case, when she's pushing something, exactly the same thoughts come into mind. If she's receiving something, she's going to let the ground support the load as she goes back in. In other words, most of the work's going to be done by the middle and the leg. If she goes back out, she pushes this way, or in the example we were using, let's just use the forearm. If I'm here and she's pushing, then I let the push actually come to my middle, and when I'm pushing back, I actually push from my leg through the middle portion of my body, and the middle portion is what I use to push her away. I don't use the shoulder of my arm to do this. When she pushes me back in and I allow the shoulder to tighten up, I have a path from the ground, but it goes through now a segmented body. The path itself rises and it goes up and out through the shoulder. We don't want it to do that. We always want our push to come from the middle toward what we're doing. So the body actually transmits the ground and lets the ground do the work. All right, so continuing on, if we now take a look at a pull or something that's coming toward the body, as opposed to something that went up and out from the body in the previous example, then we can look at it like this. Let's follow the logic of it. Earlier, when we did this particular push, she set up a path to the ground by relaxing all the muscles that she needed, except for the muscles that are needed to hold the body in position. She sank down, relaxed, and she let a path form down to her back leg. Now then, that's a push, and the power that she's generating is coming from the ground up and out of the body toward me. All right, so then let's take an example where this same push, I can look at it another way. I can put a rope around Kim's elbow, and I can pull it. And the path is actually going through her body in the same way and down into the back leg, exactly as before. It's just that I'm pulling her body. This is, so if a pull is applied to her, the pull itself goes down through the body and into the leg closest to me. Now we can take this and I can hold her here. She can turn around. And essentially my pull now is the same thing as someone pushing on her from the other side. Okay? So, but really when I'm pulling or applying any force to her upper torso, I'm trying to apply this particular force to her middle section. So let me, instead of pulling here, let me maybe reach and pull her belt. Okay, so when she feels a pull, she should feel it with her belt. If she pulls me toward her, then she pulls me with her belt. All right? So let me go back to her arm again. If I'm pulling her arm, she should feel it in her belt. If she relaxes and pulls me, she can feel like she's pulling me with her belt. So a pull can be thought of as a pull from the belt, and before, when we use the stick, any push, of course, is like a push going through a stick toward the middle of the body. Okay? So, but an added factor sort of comes in when the pull is applied, because she not only goes horizontally backward, she has to go into the ground in this case. So a pull actually involves a combination of the structure itself and the gravity. So the weight of her body is applied as she goes back and down, and the structure of her body is bringing the path down into her front leg. So the two things to remember on a pull have to do with the fact that the pull is exactly the same thing as a push done from the other side, and that the gravity has to be used, so the body has to sink downward to help compensate for it. All right, so in examining these four directions of movement that we've looked at previously, there's power up from the ground to some load or something we're carrying. There's power downward that we use to bring something down. There's a path of power which goes up and out, or there's a path of power which comes down and in. These are the four main directions of power where we use these paths. The paths themselves are the essence of what we're doing when we practice. For instance, in a Tai Chi form, what we're actually doing is practicing moving a path, and this takes some retraining to do, and that's mainly why the Tai Chi form itself is done so very slowly, because you're retraining the way that you move. All right, so this path, let's talk about the path for a moment. If Kim pushes on me, and she pushes, there's the ground, but back off one moment, please, Kim. So just before she begins to push, I'm not moving or anything. The path is there just before she moves. Then as she begins to slowly push, my strength flows from my back foot to the shortest distance from the middle of the body toward her push. Okay, so my strength follows this path. But the path is the main thing that we're setting up. If she takes the push, go ahead and she pushes, then a path sets up to my back leg. If she immediately changes this to a pull, then a path immediately sets up to the front leg. I don't have to particularly change, I allow the path itself to change where it's going. The path can go to different areas depending on what you do. Well, let's take a look at a somewhat exaggerated example of that. If I use a stick and Kim first pushes in, the path is formed such that the power goes down my back leg. All right, now then, without moving, if she takes the stick away, my hands are still in the same position. And now she pushes my hand here, push, then the same path goes to my back leg, but now it's at a different place. The end of the path is no longer at the end of the stick, it's at my hand, so then we stop. And then without my moving, she's going to push against my chest, and so a path is formed from where her hand is down my back leg. It's quite solid. All right, so thanks. So how did the end of the path change? From the end of the stick to the end of my hand to my chest. So this is an often traditionally stated concept that the mind leads this path, and then the strength follows along that path. In today's world of science and physiology and anatomy, we would probably say that there are micro adjustments made by the body to the incoming path if we have trained our bodies so that they automatically ground something into our legs. So we use the mind, first of all, to put the path there. I can hold my hands like this, and there maybe is no path. Or I can sort of make the mental readiness for the path to be there, and there is a path when she pushes. So the difference between when there is a path and when there's not a path is not discernible on the surface. It's something that happens within the body. If she pushes my body here, a path forms after some training. If she pushes my body here, a path forms and it's grounded immediately. If she begins to lift my arm straight up, lift up, then my body assigns the weight of gravity to that area. If I turn my back and she pushes, well, you can push it up higher also. Then it just automatically grounds into my leg. My body has to be relaxed while this is happening, or the body will segment into a rigid group, which we don't want. So to train this, you have to stay relaxed and allow this path to set up at all times. If, again, just to reiterate something that we went over, when she's pushing me, I have to be aware that the path comes up my back leg into my middle section, and that my leg is pushing, in a sense, it's not pushing, but the path sets up directly toward my elbow or my forearm where she's pushing. If I tense up the shoulder, then the path, they could say that it rises, and it's no longer the clean ground path. As soon as my shoulder tenses, then I have closed the ground path and I've begun to segment my body. So the shoulder is closed if it tenses. If it allows the ground path to be conveyed to her and doesn't interfere by inserting itself along the way, then the path is open. And this is what we want. We always want to be relaxed so that the ground path can form freely and flow. I can do this same thing, incidentally, while I'm sitting in a chair. If there's someone who's disabled to some extent and they don't have the use of their legs, when she pushes into me, I can allow a path to set up that goes from her push to this area inside, pretend I have the stick here, and then through my buttocks into the chair, and from the chair legs down into the floor. So exactly the same thing. So if I, for instance, if I were in a wheelchair, I could push her with a ground path that goes from my buttocks through to here, and I straighten the back. So I can use the back as a source of power if I can't access my legs. So the chair is a good example, particularly that can be used also, as I said, for somebody who's got some disability. We also need to look, before we close, at something in terms of going up. Remember that the path itself has to go from the shortest distance from the supporting feet to where something is pushing up. So I have to actually think of how would I straighten the legs and back to originate that path. If I were going down, I have to think what is the shortest and most efficient and most relaxed way of putting gravity downward in something. Next, moving on to the idea of coordinating what we've looked at in terms of these four directions of power and how to use them, let's take a look at training and using the whole idea to start with. First of all, as sort of a reiteration of what we just did, if Kim were to take my hands that I hold like this, and then she pushes into me, then a path automatically sets up to the ground. I should be very relaxed, and yet she should feel solidity. So in other words, the postural muscles themselves are not doing any more than holding the structure in shape to allow the path to send her incoming force down into the ground. If she changes this to a pull, this is the second direction, then immediately a path sets up going into my front leg. But again, I shouldn't be tense. I should be relaxed, and yes, she should feel a very solid resistance. If she puts her hands on top of my fist and pushes down, I set up a path that counteracts her down push. And this is very similar to the path that was set up on top of my head originally with the weight, the load that I was carrying like a porter does. If she puts her hands under my hand and begins to lift up, as she lifts up, I allow her to try to lift my weight, which is considerable. And she has a lot of trouble doing that because I put my weight into her hands, and the distance that her hands are from her body and so forth make it very difficult for her to lift my weight. So she feels a very solid down weighting. So in all four of these cases, I have allowed the structure of and paths to do the work. In other words, I didn't resist her push with a muscular resistance. For instance, the way that someone normally moves has to do with they set their body into some sort of stable posture, and then if in a normal situation, if somebody were to push, then the arms and shoulders would come actively into the work motion itself. And in this case, all we're trying to do is allow, as soon as she pushes, we allow a path to set up and allow the legs and lower body to absorb the push. So the upper body is only a conductor, a transmitter, a conveyor of either the ground coming up through the structure, or the upper body is a conductor or conveyor of the weight going down. So this is what we want to allow to do the work. And these are passive motions. I also can take the situation where I use this path that she pushes into me. It's solid, and then what I want to do is stay very relaxed, and I'm relaxed, but she feels it very solid. And I then extend that path toward her, and I extend by really changing weight from the back foot toward the front foot. So the middle of the body moves forward. If she's holding my wrist and she's pulling, and I want to go the other way, then the front leg does most of the work, and the upper body is strictly a conveyor of that pull. In other words, if you remember in the earlier example I used, I can pretend that I'm pulling her with my belt, okay? And this is the best way to look at it. These are the main motions that we're going to make in a lot of the movements. But if we go to others that we look at, these are not used so much. But down, I essentially allow the middle part of my body to sink down and allow the automatic setup of muscles to apply to it. So I could say that a gross look at the motion has to do with me dropping my body weight. As I get a little more sophisticated, I can apply my weight without such an obvious overt movement. When I lift up, I don't want to set up a stable structure and then use the shoulder muscles to lift her. I want to, as I feel this, I'm in a relaxed posture, but my legs are slightly bent and my back is slightly bowed outward, acting like another joint. So when I lift up, it's very much like I lift her with my back and legs, okay? And again, as this becomes more sophisticated, there's less of the overt use of the legs and the back. All right? So in all of these cases, the power that I'm using, the structural power for up, out, or pulling, or down, I have in my hands. Some people, I see situations where somebody, if Kim is pushing me here, so she pushes, I'm rooting her push into the ground. So go ahead and push. So I'm rooting this into the ground, and then when I start to do something with my hands and arms are actually moving independently of the rooted torso. So I often see this sort of movement where somebody is trying to emulate internal strength, where they root the major part of the body, but the arms and hand motions are independent, and they are not actually conveying the path to the hands. So this is something we want to really strive for. If I'm moving my hands in a direction, at any point in time I can say stop to myself or a partner, and he or she can push, and the relaxed ground path should be there. So at any portion, at any kind of movement, I should be able to stop, and if she pushes, the ground path should be there. I should be very relaxed. All right? So now then, let's talk about let's go into a little bit more detail on a couple of ways to look at this and go from there. First of all, in looking at the four directions of power, let's begin to put them together. The lifting motion comes from pushing a ground path using the leg and back up. The going out and away from the body involves pushing a ground path that goes from the back and legs up to the middle portion, and remember our stick, and we're pushing that stick as our support for the push away. Then we're going to add our weight and come down. And then we're going to come back and in, and we'll do that by coming from the front leg to the back leg and adding some ground power and pulling with the belt. Remember our example of pulling with the belt. So we're pulling the belt in. Okay, so I lift using the legs and back. I go out pushing the stick from my middle here, and I can have some extension and try to keep it very solidly and relaxedly, the good ground support. And then again, I go down by allowing my weight to be here. So I pretend there's somebody holding their hand under my hand, and I drop my weight down, and then coming in, I pull in, but I pretend I'm pulling with my belt. So I speed it up a little bit, so I go power more or less from my back and leg, push out by changing the weight and using the stick to push from here to here, go down with the weight, come back in pulling with the belt. So I lift with the back and leg, not the shoulder. This is probably the primary mistake, is that people will try to lift with the shoulder when really they're lifting with the leg and back. So I lift leg and back, out, down with weight, in, pulling with the belt. So I've got this motion up, out and away, down, and back in, that is composed of using the ground path to push up. This is the same power we use to lift with our head, only we're using it to lift something here. Out with the stick and moving the weight from the back leg to the front leg. Down with the weight, back in, pulling with the belt, not with the arm. All right, so this is sort of outlining a square. Up, out, down, in. Let's change this and just make it a little bit more of a circular hand wave. And so we lift up, out, down, and back in. But even though this is circular, up, out, down, and back in, we actually are using the components that are involved in this square. So our circle comes from a square. Okay? Now to make this somewhat easier to follow, we could go ahead and add a black dot to myself. And this black dot will help you see that the center of the body moves and is actually what is powering or motivating these movements. So when I push my hand up using the back and leg, the black dot rises. When I push out and away, the waist turns. When I bring down with the weight, the black dot goes down. And when I come back in, the black dot leads the way. So really, my hands are following the motions of the middle of the body. So again, kind of, while I do this a few times, pay attention to the movement of the center of the body in relation to the hand wave itself. Now I can do the same sort of motion. We could say that this one is in a horizontal plane in front of me. I can do it in a more or less vertical plane in front of me by lifting up with the body, out with a push from the back leg to the front, down weighting, and then using the belt to pull back in. So I lift up, out, down, back in. Up. Now as I go up, notice that this black dot turns up too. So the middle turns up. It goes forward. It rotates down as I go down, and then it goes backward as I go back. So the middle of the body is making a motion that is just like the hand motion. And so basically the power is coming from the lower part of the body, and it's going to the upper part of the body. So the hands are only expressing what the middle portion of the body is really doing. We don't want the hands to go by themselves. Okay? This seems to be a very common phenomenon that most people can't seem to get around. They actually have great difficulty in moving the hands by the middle of the body because they've trained so many years in doing this sort of motion that they may start off doing this, but very shortly they'll wind up moving the hands separately. In the hand wave itself, they may start off slowly, letting the middle of the body actually move the hand, but very quickly you begin to see a situation where that maybe the middle is moving, but the hand is moving by itself. And right away, we know that if we stop them suddenly, we find out that most of what's motivating their hand is the arm and shoulder muscles themselves. Okay? A good way to practice this sort of motion is to pretend that you're underwater, well, of course not buoyantly underwater, but let's just say that your arm is in water. And so how would you lift your arm against a water resistance? How would you push it away using the back leg and back against water resistance? How would you bring your weight down against water resistance? How would you come back in using water resistance? So I'm lifting with my back against water, pushing out against water, sinking my weight down against water, and I'm pulling with my belt back in against water. So I can slowly feel that I'm doing that, and gradually, if I'm staying relaxed and motivating things with the ground path and the down weight of the gravity, then I will retrain the body to move in this fashion. It's difficult to get past the stage where you're using the old way of moving and moving to this new way. It takes a great amount of retraining to do that, and that's essentially what a Tai Chi form is for. The reason people do it very slowly is to retrain into this form of movement, which is very powerful and it's very relaxed and very efficient. There's an element of this form of movement that needs to be talked about, and it has to do with this form of movement being refined and practiced to the level that it approaches stillness. And this sort of needs a little bit of explanation. If I can have a static movement, for instance, if Kim is pushing me here, so she pushes and a path forms and this goes to the ground, yet I'm relaxed, push. Okay, so she's pushing and it immediately goes to the ground, but that's in a static motion. In the movement that we just did previously in the hand wave, if you notice there was a large amount of easily visible motion in the sense that the legs are moving, the middle of the body is moving, and the upper body is of course moving through the motion that we did. If we continue to practice this form of motion, we can begin to approach the point where so much of the overt body movement is not needed, and we just more or less manipulate the path. And the reasoning and logic behind that works like this. If Kim were to push my hand here, she pushes, and this goes through me more or less in a path from here toward the middle and down the back leg. No problem. Okay, so let's stop. Now then, if I move the path here, okay, so now I'm here and she pushes, and this goes again into the back leg. All right, let's stop. And then if I move here, she pushes, and it goes to the ground. Now notice I didn't really move this portion of my body much at all when that happened. Matter of fact, almost none. If I could have a ground path here and here and here, with a little thought and attention, each time adjusting the body so that I'm most relaxed, so that the absolutely most relaxed path forms, I can actually form a path now to the ground, now. I'm moving slightly so that you can see this, and here. With a little bit of practice, I actually can have the ground in my hand while I move like this. So I can actually make a movement that is not necessarily so obvious in the way that we did previously. And what I'm saying is that with a certain amount of practice, and this doesn't take many years, but it takes a couple of years to have this new form of movement imbued in you so that you can do this, you can actually put the path where you want at will. So if, for instance, Kim is change feet, and she's getting ready to push me, all right, so she's pushing me here, I can, with both hands, I can redirect her push by just changing my path so that she's pushing herself away. So without any overt movement, I changed my path to the point where she pushed herself away. So this idea of stillness in movement comes in. And this, if this happens over a period of time, my motions may begin to look, for instance, in the hand wave, they may begin to look like this, which is not really discernible or distinguishable from normal movement that you do. And yet I'm bringing the paths of power up, out and away, down, in and back toward me, using these paths. And really, probably the main giveaway is a slight motion of the middle section of the body. But it can be done by fairly skilled practitioners with almost no movement. So I can take a motion, for instance, that looks like this with not a lot of body movement, and yet I can have the path there. What I have to do all the way through this is pretend that I have somebody who's testing me. Is this a pure, relaxed, very solid connection to the ground? Is it now? Is it now? Is it now? Is it now? So when I do this, I just try to maintain a path, or any other motion. I try to maintain a path. And the idea of maintaining the path is far more critical than the actual movements themselves. The essence of all of this is how do you maintain the path and move? That's what I wanted to say about it. We need to look at some exercises that will help in developing this form of skill, and it's a skill. It's a little cumbersome at first, like your grandmother's knitting, but as you go along in time, you know, that knit 1, purl 2 just becomes automatic. So let's take a look at a few exercises. The main exercise, and this is an exercise that I recommend that you do every day. If somebody only gives you 1 minute to do exercises in a day, then you should do an exercise for your legs. All right. The easiest exercise to do for your legs would be, and it depends on your leg strength. If your leg strength you're not sure of and you want to support it, it doesn't hurt to put your hands on top of your knees so that some weight from the upper torso rests through the arms onto the knees themselves without stressing the quads and the connection into the knees. So if you get a chance to grab a hold of a doorpost, to grab the edge of a desk, or to do just this freestanding with your hands on, do these form of squats. I call them sort of like old man squats. And go down and as you become more warmed up, let your legs carry more of the load. But if you're not warmed up, try to let your arms support some of the load. So you're going down onto the legs and straight up. Now it helps to pretend that there's a load, like the red load I had on the top of my head at the beginning of this video, on top of your head, and that you're going directly under it and directly back up. You can also, as you're going down, let the lower part of your back bow outward slightly, so it bows out, going directly under the load and back up, so that not only are you exercising your legs going down and up, but you're exercising your back with it bowing and unbowing. Let the back bow, let it unbow. Back bows, unbows. If you can do even 10 of these at a time, and then maybe a few minutes, a half an hour or so later, do 10 more. And as through the day goes, do a few leg exercises, because the strength of your body is directly proportional to the strength of your legs. You can do a little bit more sophisticated form using a stick, holding onto a banister, a wall, a chair, and you can do exactly the same thing, but put your weight more to one side and then the other. All right? So I'm going down on my right leg, and as I go down, I let my back bow. And then as I straighten, I push straight up with my head, and then I go down, keeping the ground under the load on my head, and my back bows. I come back up, down, back up. As you get stronger, you can go lower. If you don't feel your legs are strong yet, don't by any means go too low. Don't jeopardize any portion of your body. Again, this is a good exercise in that it begins to weight more onto one leg as opposed to the two-legged old man squat. The next exercise that we're going to take a look at has to do with manipulating a ground path, much as we did with the hand wave. Only in this case we're going to use some sort of weight, a book with a little bit of weight to it, a brick, not a heavy brick, but something with a little bit of weight. The reason is that we want to be able to not just hold this object here, but we want to be able to get our support under it. So I get my support under this brick or book object, and then keeping my weight under it, not my weight, but my ground path under it, I then move it around in a circle. Now the trick is to move with the body. If you'll notice when I'm moving, the hands are really not moving. It's the hands and arms are staying in place in relation to the center of my sternum, and so I'm actually moving the legs and the middle of my waist. And if you see the black spot on my shirt, you can see that that's what's doing the moving. The problem is, again, to retrain yourself away from this sort of motion. Too many people, when they're doing this sort of thing, they start off with a motion that may be adequate for a few revolutions, and then they begin to move the hands and arms out of sync, which means right away that they've gone to their shoulder and arms. And what you want to be able to do is learn to move the hands and arms by using the body, not by using the local arm and shoulder muscles. This is a good one to also do in this vertical direction. Okay, so I'm going down with my legs and my back bowing, up with it unbowing and out, down and back in with my back bowing and going down the leg. So I have sort of two cycles, up and out, down and in, up and out, down and in. So up, using the back, out, pushing with the stick from the middle, down using the weight, and back in using the belt. Up and out, down and in. So in other words, again, we're trying to use the structure of the body to move up and out, and the structure with gravity to go down and in. So this is a good exercise to accomplish basics. And the other one. As you become more skilled, again, you'll need, as we said in the last segment, as your movement becomes more skilled and experienced, you need less overt movement. And you actually can move with the ground path under your object with not much obvious movement, in which case the hands will move a little bit away from the middle, but the power will be there. Okay, but don't try to jump the step of where you're using the structure of the body to do it, to not overtly use it and think that you've got there already, because it takes a amount of practice to get there where this path can be yours to manipulate as you will. One very basic exercise that can be done to strengthen the body frame itself is just a standing exercise. The standing exercises can be done in a number of ways, and essentially what they do is practice bringing the path to either a particular point in your body or to bringing a path to a potential that surrounds you, such that if somebody were to push you, say on the arm, it would go to the leg. If they pushed on the other arm, you might have to do a minute adjustment, but you would still bring the path to the ground. If they pushed your back, you should be able to form a path from where they push to the foot furthest away from the push, and so forth. So in standing like this, you can practice, like I said, to a single point or all around, but in practicing bringing a path, the body frame itself strengthens over a period of time. It takes muscles to hold this sort of posture. This is not done by levitation or electromagnetic waves. No one is saying that I'm standing perfectly relaxed and has their hands up. That's impossible. Your hands are up. You may be holding them up with the leg and the back, but there's some usage of the shoulder and arm muscles. There's no avoiding it. The trick is to keep the use of the postural muscles to an absolute minimum so that the structural path is doing the work, and the postural muscles are only holding the body in position to transmit the path. If you're in a a stance or posture of extremely stable configuration, then you should be able to, in a very relaxed way, have the potential for forming a path wherever anything touches you. So I can stand like this, and I can pretend there's someone pushing against the outsides of my forearms or hands, and I can practice grounding in this way, or I could do it this way with my hands out. It doesn't particularly matter. I could do it here. But the point is that I'm using the mind to have this path ready. If I just do standing without this path, and I can do it, it'll look pretty much the same. Pretty much all I'm going to practice is building up the leg muscles, the shoulders, and the arms, and so forth. In other words, you're not going to be using anything different than you normally would be doing, and you'd just be doing a simple isometric exercise, not using the mind to direct this form of path. I can also, in this position, I can put my weight, for instance, I can pretend that my weight, now I'm sinking against someone's shoulders or hands like this, and I put my hands, much as Kim did with me earlier, and I can will a down path here and have it ready. So I can, in this position, for instance, I can practice power coming up and out from the ground, or I might want to do, almost in the same posture, I can practice sinking weight down. Usually I'll always do some combination of the two. For instance, if I'm standing in a posture like this, and someone pushes me, they would run into a ground path. If they pulled on me, it would immediately ground the other way. If they lifted up, they would immediately encounter the down weighting, which is always there also. Some postures that are standing are postures that are strictly using the path up and out. These are called open postures. Some postures involve the sinking down of the weight of the body and the body winding in, and these are closed postures. Any of these you can hold and practice, but again, the idea is to let either gravity do the work or let the structural path that the body is transmitting do the work. If you push, again, remember, the path doesn't come up to the shoulders and out. The path comes up to about the midsection and goes out to here. If I let it go up to here and out to here, then I would say my chi rises, my path rises in this case. And that's not what you want to do. You want the shortest path to the foot with the most relaxed body, using the least postural muscles. And if you do any sort of motion, you want to do it with the whole body, not locally. Too often I see somebody who sort of has an idea, but he tries to stabilize his lower legs and his waist, and he tries to manipulate a ground path without much movement of the lower body, and this is incorrect. The next exercise is really a reiteration of the exercise that we did earlier in the tape of the hand wave. And if you remember, the hand wave involved lifting, putting the ground path on top, so that if somebody tested it, you'd be lifting with the ground, and then pushing out, and again you push from the back leg, and remember our stick we had, and we push this way. And then when I sink down, I try to put the weight of my body in the hand, and as it goes down, and then I use my belt to pull it back in. All right, so I lift with the back, push out, sink down with the weight. So I'll try to put my weight in my hand or my wrist, and then come back in with the belt. When I do this, as I begin to push from my leg into my back, as the back expands from being pushed into, it begins to pull my elbow up. And that pulling of my elbow up tends to turn my hand over. So when I open and push up and outward, the elbow tends to go away from the body. When I go down and in, because these muscles are pulling down and in, they only do it subconsciously. You don't want to consciously do it. You just want to sink down, pulling with the weight here. This will pull the elbow down and back in using the belt. So I push up and out, my elbows go out. And as I come down and in, the elbows go in. So this causes the hand to turn, because I'm driving it from the ground or allowing the gravity to sink back down in, and this makes the winding of the body come back in. So this is a good exercise. The problem is to make sure that the correct power is in the hand at all times. In most cases, too many times somebody gets into the look and the appearance of these and they don't realize that they're mentally training the body to convey this power at all times. This is the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do. The appearances have nothing to do with it. We're retraining the body. It's very difficult to do. And most people fail in this because they don't realize the magnitude of the retraining that's used in the body. So stay very relaxed and allow the path to flow from the ground to the body to here, unhindered by segmenting, which tension causes. If I switch here suddenly to my shoulder, then I've broken everything. Now the shoulders is, in other words, my power came up to about here, and then my shoulder took over. And this is not what we're trying to do. We're trying to maintain a path that goes from the leg to the middle of the body and out to the hand while we do it. Okay? Any tension will stop this repatterning. So you cannot use any tension. And you must always control the movement with the legs and the waist. Okay? And as you do this, you can make your motion smaller. This is the same motion that I was just doing. Now I make it smaller. Or smaller. Okay? So practice this slowly. It takes some time to begin to get a feel for it, but it does come gradually, and stay relaxed. The hand wave that we just did involved the 4 directions of power of up, using the ground path, trying to get under the hand, out and away from the body, which remember we can do horizontally or we could do vertically in front of us. And the next one is down, we're putting the weight of the body here, and then back in. Remember, we're pulling with the belt. So again, this is a structural consideration, this pulling back in. So we can take this and do what's called a universal exercise. And the exercise looks somewhat like this, in the sense that I try to pretend there's something resting on top of my fingers, and I push it up with my legs and back. And naturally, as in any case where I'm going up and out, the body tends to naturally wind so that the elbows go out away from the body. So I pretend there's some little weight here, and I push it up, and I just let the body unwind this way. And of course, it naturally expands as you get up here, and particularly if you're breathing in. Then as we go down, we're putting our weight underneath the wrist and the arms, and we're coming down. And as we're coming in, the body tends to wind in. The elbows come in, and the knees come in a little bit automatically, because this is the way the body naturally responds. When it contracts, the knees and elbows come in, and the back bows. So we come in to our start, push up. Now the back begins unbowing to help assist. The elbows come out. We're shifting to weight down. So the weight this weight in here is pulling down. So it's pulling this down. Elbows begin to come in. And we start again. So we cycle again. this particular movement of the body from a closed, wound in situation to an open, unwound out is the basis of the whole body movement done in internal strength. If your push up and out is powered from the ground, and your pull down and in is powered by gravity and the body contracting in. So this particular exercise, let me do it a couple of times. Always keeping in mind that there must be a ground path. If someone said, stop, then you need to, if they stopped and felt you, would there be a ground path? Stop, would they feel the down weighting correctly being there, or you were actually using just arms and muscles, shoulder muscles and maybe the lats on this? So you have to be aware that you're manipulating a ground path. All the motions of Tai Chi come from this particular exercise. Everything can be described in these terms. Any sort of motion like this can actually be looked at as derivative of this particular exercise. So to do this exercise, go down, allow some mental concept of what it's like if there was a weight here, push it up from the ground, begin to, as you reach the limit, you'll feel it shift to the down pulling of the body, let it bring it down, and wind in, and then up. As you get better, of course, there's less overt body motion. As I said, you approach stillness, so you'll begin to see a motion that looks a little bit more like this. All right, I've tried to give, in a very brief time, without a lot of extraneous detail, the best way to approach logically the mental concepts of how to move using this form of power, and then to give you some basic ideas of how to start doing it and exercises to continue it with. That's the end of this video. There will be another video that involves more advanced exercises, and in addition there will be the concepts of breathing and how this works with this form of movement to augment it. You actually can get a lot of power addition to your movement by the use of the body breathing mechanisms. And there will be other topics too. For instance, the release of power, which involves learning how to use this basic form of motion, how to use breath, weight shift, how to store and release power. And that'll be covered in the second video that's going to be available. Thank you very much for your time.